The city of LA needs $166 million to preserve affordable housing. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, which is Friday, it's the 12th of January 2024, I'm going to be talking about something that came out yesterday. It is apparently a situation where I think it's 193 properties which have been designated as affordable housing. Those covenants are going to expire at the end of 2027. Now, that basically means that these properties that have been kind of designated where the rent is restricted, keeps those properties as affordable so that people who are in less fortunate economic situations can afford to rent these properties. Those restrictions that have been put on those properties are due to expire. And so those units that have been affordable are no longer going to be affordable and potentially are going to raise to market rates, which in LA is very, very expensive. Now, it's interesting that this is something that they're discussing now. I think that's great that they're actually talking about it 3 years in advance or over 3 years in advance. But there have been 23 of these properties out of the, how many are there? Sorry. 23 of these properties out of the 193 properties which are considered at risk high priority. The rest of them are at risk. So these covenants on these ones are set to expire in the next 5 years. That's only representing 460 units out of the 6,000 that are going to be put at risk in this situation. So these 23 high priority properties is estimated to cost the city of LA 166 million to preserve them. Now that is a massive amount of money for 463 units. I don't even want to work out what that is per unit, but 166 million is a huge amount of money. And so the city of LA have voted to get their staff to find alternatives or to find solutions for this situation. And so to preserve these units is obviously going to be very expensive. It'll be interesting to see if another tact is taken, whether that's to develop new units to build more affordable housing. I would say in LA, there is very little room for that. It's very difficult to find sites that have not been developed or are not incredibly valuable and are going to take a lot of time to develop for that. Probably not in the locations where these current units are. So that's 166 million. They basically said that there are potential ways of raising that money, which is going to be they're going to explore federal and state programs like the HOME program. It's capital HOME if you want to look that up. And also the permanent local housing allocation. These are those state and federal programs. And apparently that requires, they have a lot more limitations on them, whether that needs to basically fit certain criteria to be able to do that. So some of these properties probably won't fall into that criteria, which is a reason why they're not going to be able to use it on preserving all of these units. Obviously, there could be special exceptions made. We'll get to see if that is the case, but I think that potentially is what they're going to be able to do this. The other thing which I've discussed a lot on this channel is using the money from Measure ULA. Now, ULA is the mansion tax, or that's what it was called on the ballot. Effectively means that a percentage, I believe it's about 4% over $5 million is a transfer tax. So if you're buying that, that transfer tax needs to be paid at anything over $5 million. Over $10 million, it is about 5%. So a huge chunk of money, and that has been allocated by the city of LA to go towards helping homeless and affordable housing. So it sounds like that is potentially a source of income that they could use to do that. I've got an opinion on that, which we can discuss, but it was called the mansion tax. But it was a tax effectively on everything. It was not on residential luxury houses. It was on multi-unit apartment buildings. It was on commercial buildings. Any piece of real estate that sold over $5 million or $10 million was going to have this tax, which was not, in my opinion, when I went to vote in the midterms, put across in any way to the voter. So it's a little bit of an odd one. And I was thinking about this just now. Obviously, you're kind of wanting to create affordable housing units, but you've almost shot yourself in the foot with that. Excuse the expression, but it means that basically those units that were going to be sold, that were going to be invested in, be that mainly multi-unit residential apartment buildings where you're trying to create affordable housing, you've now put a 5% levy on top of that. So that means that those affordable units are no longer really going to be affordable, or they're much harder to create, because of the fact that if an investor or someone's going to buy that building, they need to raise the rents a further 5% to make the same return that they were going to. So they either renovate the building and make it, a lot more expensive, hence kind of eliminating those affordable units. And the other side is the landlords may hold on to them, but they're not going to invest in these units. They're not going to they're not going to put a lot of money into them when they're not going to see the return in terms of rent. So you are not really creating affordable units. You're kind of keeping the rent level where it is for units that are becoming in a worse and worse situation, in worse and worse maintenance and condition. And then you're creating a whole more expensive apartment model that that landlords are going to go after in order to recoup these losses or this tax that they've paid. So it's weird that this money is going to be used to create more affordable housing units, when really what it's done originally is create less affordable housing units. So obviously that is, one aspect of it. The commercial side is another one, and we've seen a huge slowdown in commercial transactions. In fact, saw at the end of 2023 a huge slowdown in all transactions over that price point, because it did not look that attractive to buy. So I think what the funds that were being raised by ULA, what was predicted, it was far less than what they were predicting. Sorry. So that's definitely interesting. And I don't know if you agree with my take on that, but it's going to be one to watch, as I always say. But it's also like, I completely agree. Affordable housing is needed. You need to not kind of have a situation where LA is too expensive for most people to live. It kind of excludes a lot of people from that. And I think that these covenants that have been in place, it's basically most older buildings, I believe prior to 1980, 1978, that have got these covenants in place. So I presume that's probably like a 50-year covenant that went in, hence it's kind of expiring at the end of 2027. That would make sense. So I agree that those are good things to have in place, but to extend those is going to be very difficult for the city to do. And a lot of the landlords that own these buildings are going to be filing papers with the courts, which apparently they need to give as part of these covenants. They need to give a large window of notification that this is what's going to happen. It's going to affect the tenants that are in there. So they're going to start doing that very soon, because that's probably 3 years away for most of those properties now. But 166 million is what they're saying is to effectively pay the difference in rent. So I think that that money goes up and up and up. It's 166 million where you're turning around and offering that unit at a set price. However, you're having to top that up to the market rate. And if the market rate keeps increasing, then it's basically just a money pit for the city to be throwing money into. If you're a taxpayer in the city of LA, I don't think that's necessarily something you want to be paying for. This massive chunk of difference in rent for very few units, it seems like that really isn't worth that kind of funding, in my opinion. So it's going to be weird to see what they do with this. I thought that was actually quite an interesting kind of point just to bring up. It's probably going to see some updates in the next few weeks, few months. The other thing they've said with that 166 million is to renovate those units, create more disabled accesses. I don't really understand how that is 166 million and how that is going to basically continue the covenants. I presume maybe that makes them more available for federal funding. Hence, you're doing buildings which are more accessible to disabled people, to people who may need a certain level. So therefore, those funding sources can become available. That might be the situation, but that's what they've estimated as 166 million. They've now said to their staff, we need to go out and find a resolution to this. We need to find other units. We need to either pay this amount or prepare to. So we'll see how this plays out. I hope you guys are good wherever you are. I'm going to be back on Monday with another video. So I hope you enjoy your weekend. And if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Goodbye.